Okay, Colin, before we dive into the specifics of the immigration issue, what is the political strategy underpinning this listening tour in the first place? And we should point out this process could lead to referendum questions on a variety of issues, from a provincial pension plan to police force. What is Danielle Smith doing? Why is she doing this?
I think that's really a two-pronged thing. One, I mean, going back to kind of the initial concept of something like this with the Fair Deal panel under Jason Kenney, I think it's an exercise to kind of push back against the federal government and try to identify opportunities to really assert provincial jurisdiction over some areas that might be currently run by the federal government, or areas where the province wants to grow its kind of authority. I think the second one, and I think the more notable reason behind it and the timing of this, is to really kind of release the temperature on some of the separatist rhetoric. I do think that if this is done effectively, she'll be able to kind of calm down that portion of the UCP base that might be very angry with the outcomes of the federal election, that is really pushing that kind of more separatist momentum in Alberta towards wanting to leave, and give them an outlet to really voice their opinion, voice their thoughts, and share their ideas on what they want to see without Alberta leaving Canada. And I think from a political strategy standpoint, it's that two-pronged thing. She's looking to navigate her relationship with the federal government and assert Alberta's authority over certain areas, and really lower the temperature on that part of the base that can be problematic for the UCP should they not be managed well.
All right, Leah, why do you think Smith is doing this?
I think she's been pretty clear. Well, I mean, pretty clear is maybe a bit of a stretch, but she has sort of said the quiet part out loud a few times. She's doing this not to appease necessarily a growing, arguably growing separatist sentiment in Alberta, but to grow the one, or to quell the one that's growing in her base, among the people that she needs in order to keep the leadership of the United Conservative Party and thus the premiership. We were talking a little bit before going live about the by-election in Didsbury Three Hills. That's a great example of where I think her judgment is really misplaced on this. So we saw the Separatist Party there take vote from the UCP, but they still won, which should allow her to conclude that she has political capital to spend by denouncing that separatist sentiment rather than continuing to stoke it. And so every time she says she's not a separatist, while running ads about how Ottawa is a problem and all of the things failing Albertans are Ottawa's fault, she's really speaking out of both sides of her mouth.
Okay, we have a lot of time to talk about the potential for a referendum on separation in the weeks and months to come. I want to dive into some of the specifics that are really making noise around this Alberta Next panel. So some background here. There's an online survey component to this initiative, and some of the questions focus on immigration. The website describes immigration as being disastrous over the last decade, with the implication being that the number of new immigrants is putting strain on the housing and job markets. So Albertans are being asked to weigh in on the idea of the province setting up a permit system for immigrants, which could allow the government to cut some immigrants off from some social services like health care, education, those sorts of things. These would be people who don't meet the criteria for a permit. Again, Colin, set aside the policy merit or lack of merit on this idea. What is the political merit for the Premier in floating it?
Yeah, I think the motivation behind this kind of question and not being in those rooms anymore is that it's more than just the service delivery, but the fact that the provincial government does believe that immigration levels have become unsustainable, and kind of going back to that other conversation, using this as an opportunity to kind of push back on the feds and say we need more of a say over immigration policy. Now, I will say the policy itself, I mean, the permit itself is an unprecedented concept, but for having tiers of social service delivery for certain levels of visas, certain levels of work permits, that's not unprecedented. There's other social services in different parts of the country. I had to personally navigate it once with a family member who wasn't able to access healthcare in Ontario, but then when we moved to Alberta, they were able to access healthcare right away. So it's not a uniquely unprecedented idea, but I genuinely think from the government standpoint, it's more of a, we need to send Ottawa a message that we need more control over our immigration here, similar to what other provinces have, perhaps looking at Quebec. And like the rest of the Alberta Next exercise, it is more about that message sending to Ottawa than looking specifically at the social service delivery. Like there's no question it has increased costs, and it has Alberta has seen much more significant growth than the rest of the country. But I think that's what the motivation is behind this specific question.
So speaking of Ottawa, Alberta Senator Paula Simons says the idea of cutting some immigrants off is vile, xenophobic, and un-Albertan. She posted, "I am disgusted and embarrassed by this hate-mongering Alberta government campaign to whip up resentment of immigrants with disinformation and lazy racist tropes." Some pretty strong language there, Leah. Is it over the top, or do you think that's going to resonate with a lot of Albertans?
Well, this is the problem. And this is why I feel so disappointed in our premier for introducing immigration as a bit of a scapegoat for some of the very real problems. We know that the federal government mismanaged immigration. That is a true thing. But what Danielle Smith is doing is truth-y. What I mean by that is, I think that's a Jon Stewart term. But what I mean by that is she's pulling elements of the truth and she's exploiting that in order to spin a tale that is advantageous to her politically. And so if she can manage to convince Albertans or to direct Albertans' frustrations about not having access to a family doctor, about overcrowded classrooms, about teachers who don't have the resources to manage classrooms that are full of increasingly diverse kids. There's multiple languages being spoken in many cases. If that frustration can be directed at immigrants, and this is where I think Paula Simons is right, because it's cynical and vile, to direct that anger there rather than her own government that is making budgetary decisions that are creating these conditions, then she would see that as a political advantage. And that's what I find especially disappointing about a move like that.
We're getting tight on time. You two are both communications experts. It's what you do. Other people are now echoing similar sentiments to Simons, and this is leading to news pieces where people on the Alberta Next panel are now being put on the defensive. Colin, do you think this has the potential to overshadow everything else this panel is trying to achieve?
I definitely think that is a risk, especially given the media coverage that we've seen today. I think there were some slip-ups in some of the language that was used as well in some of the questioning and some of the videos. And I think for the government, as they kind of move forward with this exercise, we know it's going to be a long exercise. We know potential referendum questions next fall. As they move forward, they really need to focus on the purpose of the Alberta Next panel and what the panel overall is looking to achieve. And in terms of what the government said, that is to kind of secure that fair situation for Alberta within Canada and identify opportunities for Alberta to kind of claw back some authority. And I think the messaging moving forward really needs to focus on that. And they do need to be very careful in communicating some of the rhetoric and the language, especially around topics like immigration, because it's hard to disagree with what Leah said.
Okay, you two, we're going to end it on a point of agreement. Always nice to be able to do that. Thanks, you two. It's been great.